This is an excerpt of a recent Power Up webinar exploring the new features in Apple Final Cut Pro 10 version 10.4. Hi, this is Larry Jordan. In this excerpt, I'll show you how to change the video scopes to display HDR values. With this clip, let's hide the viewer and let's reveal the scopes. It knows that I'm in a Rec 2020 project. The standard dynamic range ends at 100. That's as high as I can go. Anything above that is clipped, and I lose access to the sun. It just burns out. Not in HDR. In HDR, I can go up to 10,000 nits. To give you an idea of how bright that is, HD stops at 100 nits. P3 stops at 400 nits. So we've got a long way to go to get to the full brightness that HDR is going to provide, which is 10,000 nits. And the problem is I can't actually see the difference yet on my computer monitor because the monitor technology, it's a hardware limitation. We don't have monitors that are bright enough to support it. So first, I'm in a Rec 2020 project. It recognizes that. So it gives me access to the full 10K. But here's the problem. If I set the waveform to, say, a standard luma, notice that my limit ends at 100. The waveform monitor does not represent HDR. But the RGB parade and the RGB overlay do. I'm going to work with overlay because it's the closest representative we have to what the waveform monitor looks like. If I select this clip and go up to the color panel and go back to the color board here, look at what happens if I raise the white level. I'm past 100. I'm up to 400. I'm as high as I can go, which takes it slightly past 400 nits. I'll pull my black level down. And what I'm able to do is to stretch the dynamic range from pure black in the shadows to well over 400 nits. Now this looks blown out on the computer monitor, and it always is because the computer monitor can't show brightness that bright. But if I had an external video monitor that's designed for HDR and connected using, say, an AGA T-Tap or a Blackmagic Design interconnect that goes from Thunderbolt to the monitor interface, I would be able to see a high dynamic range image on that external video monitor. To give us a better look at what this is, let's go up to Final Cut Pro, go down to Preferences, go to Playback, and turn on this option, Show HDR as Raw Values. Watch the image in the viewer in 2:1 woof. Now we're getting a more representative look at the differences in that image caused by HDR. If I pull this way back so it gets to 100, it's kind of not that good. So what they're doing is they're playing display games with the monitor to allow me to get a better sense of how bright the sun is, 400 nits, how dark the shadows are, 0 nits, and everywhere in between. Again, this is just sort of fudging the display. The only way you can actually see what an HDR image looks like is on an external HDR video monitor, not a computer monitor. We cannot see HDR images when the waveform is set to luma. That gives us traditional standard dynamic range. We have to be in either RGB parade or RGB overlay. So let's move over to here. Rather than try and shade this for different grayscale settings, let's just switch this back and go to Preferences, turn this off. Okay, now I want to play with a LUT. Camera sensors record data on a really wide palette, whether it's log C or RAW. It gives them the greatest flexibility to record as much dynamic range, brightness, and as much chroma saturation, color, as possible. But when we look at it, it looks gray and washed out and ugly. In 10.3, we had the ability to manipulate a red image, which I'll show you in a minute. In 10.4, we have the ability to add our own LUTs, which I'll also show you in a minute. But there's an important difference. This is a red clip. And this is a Blackmagic clip, but the Blackmagic clip has been saved as Rec 709. That means the color space has been baked into it. There's not a whole lot I can do to change it. If you want to be able to have the greatest flexibility in color grading and color correction, you want to record at least 10-bit video, and you want to record with as many stops of dynamic range as you can. Once it's converted to Rec 709, that flexibility, while not gone, is so severely restricted that we're not going to be able to do a whole lot with it. This has been an excerpt of a recent Power Up webinar exploring the new features in Apple Final Cut Pro 10 version 10.4. For the complete version of this online training, please visit our store at larryjordan.com/store and look for Webinar 241. By the way, membership is a great value when you need to stretch your training dollars. A subscription membership to our video training library saves you money and time. You can access all our videos for a low monthly price of only $19.99. That's more than 1,900 movies, hundreds of hours, all in depth and all up to date. Plus, members can attend any of our Power Up webinars for free. Our training covers Apple and Adobe software. We update it every week, and for more information, visit larryjordan.com/membership. And thanks